Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey with the Stars of Som. Last time we left off, after putting our defenses to the test, a group of Neanderthals attacked us, and unfortunately it seemed like we did not prepare enough and we suffered the heartbreaking loss of Brian's colossus toad Heaser. To make up for it, we finally unlocked deep drilling, we were joined by a few new animals, including 2 pigs, and we recruited Saber Swordsong, a dirt mole with passions for melee combat, mining and medicine. Now, before we do anything else today, let's build some new traps. I think it's time we learn from our mistakes. Of course, the small corridor here won't keep out a large horde of attackers, but we might also not stick around this map for too much longer, more on that later. For now, our 16-year-old river unlocks long blades. Whether or not we'll actually get to make some remains to be seen, and we're also going to grab gunsmithing next, just in case we get our hands on a few more components. Our latest edition Saber, meanwhile, works on acquiring more steel. With a mining skill of 12 and rising, the steel vein here should not remain standing for too much longer. Later in the evening then, some cargo pods are crashing down in the Grasslands. Inside of them we can find herbal medicine, and quite a bit of it, 41 units that we will of course gladly haul back into storage. With Saber making more progress on the steel vein, we also learn that our bison Darkanian has given birth once more. We do have plenty of animals already though, and once again we plan on leaving at some point in the not so distant future, so this one goes to the slaughter. With Saber then wrapping up a night of mining, we receive an interesting quest. Apparently, word of our gravship has spread, and we are asked to fly over to a distant region and to survey it. In exchange, we could get ourselves a shield generator for our gravship, so maybe that distant region is where we will fly to next, even though we won't know where it is exactly until we actually accept the quest. One way or another, I think it's high time that we get our gravship ready for its next journey, and of course, first up on our to-do list is to make it a bit bigger. Once a sufficient size has been reached, we are also prompted to name our ship, and I think we'll honor the late great colossus toad here. From now on, our gravship will be known as the Heaser Mark II. Just a few moments later then, we also successfully finished the gunsmithing research, and while we could now keep going down the weapon manufacturing path here with blowback and eventually gas operation, one crucial project we still need to unlock before lifting off is solar panels. After all, down the line we want our gravship to be fully self-sufficient, and wind turbines unfortunately just take up too much space. Moving on, we now expand our gravship's hull. We also quickly need to rescue Brian's vulture Joseph from a hungry fox, and then we are informed that our colonists are now gathering to celebrate Brian's and Alex's marriage. So the two of them are definitely moving fast, but well, it's not their first rodeo, and this will actually do wonders for the mood in our colony, so there is no need to complain about the two of them tying the knot quickly. Once the celebration has finished, everyone goes back to their regular schedules. For most of our colonists, that means heading off to bed, while for Saber it means more mining. Over 600 units of steel are still waiting to be collected here. That should definitely help us build a bigger and better gravship. Up next, Saber can also put her crafting skill to good use. Some of our colonists are still running around in poor quality or tattered apparel, and we have enough furs and leathers lying around to fix that. For some of our trees and heal roots, the next morning also means harvesting time, and we are not going to replant these as we will likely leave before the end of another growth cycle. As you can see though, we have quite a bit more work still left to do. On that note, I also want to mention that I really like the idea that I saw in the comments of the last episode of flying into orbit and settling down on an asteroid to build a kind of space base. However, in order to do that, we will need to unlock a lot more technology that helps us deal with the vacuum of space. So while it is definitely something that I think is worth exploring, our next destination will most likely be a bit more grounded. Just as Saber then ventures out to mine a few components, our underground scanner pops up for the first time. Unfortunately though, it's a rare gold vein. Very valuable, but not exactly what I had been hoping for. A nearby steel vein would be much more useful to us, I think. Well, at least we can recover some steel by dismantling the old gravship hull. And before our pawns head off to bed, Brian and Alex can also bring in another rice harvest. We also swiftly complete the research of solar panels. I have to say, compared to our previous series, it is a breath of fresh air to be able to pump these out with some speed. In any case, up next we'll do nutrient paste. Due to our ideology, our pawns won't mind eating it, and it removes the need for a kitchen, thus improving our flexibility when flying around the world. In the middle of the night then, our goat Lemon Sprinkles gives birth once more, but the fate of her offspring is unfortunately the usual one. We really cannot afford to take on any more animals, I feel, especially since they all also contribute to colony wealth. On the following morning, as Alex makes a few beds, we then find the long-awaited steel vein. Unfortunately, it is halfway across the map, so I think we'll keep scanning for a little while longer, hoping that the next one will be closer. As our best constructor, Alex then builds 5 new beds, with none of them having a quality below good. I had hoped for more than one excellent though, but good quality with an end table already gets us to 90% comfort, and that should be good enough for the foreseeable future. As you can see, our gravship is also slowly taking shape as we receive yet another quest. In this one, we would need to fight some pirates, 11 of them to be precise, and they will all arrive in drop pods. However, we could also gain ourselves a new colonist as a reward, and this would be our very first pawn with an aptitude for shooting things. Certainly tempting, but we're not going to make a decision just yet. Instead, it's time to finish up our gravship. If we end up accepting the quest, it might also be a good idea to be ready to launch, just in case the enemy numbers get overwhelming, and as you can see, we have a bit of work still left to do. In the evening, we also detect the signal of a mech hive. This is actually the first stage of Odyssey's unique endgame quest. For now, the game just informs us of a mechanoid hive hidden somewhere in orbit. How and where to find it will all be revealed to us in due time. One quick note at this point, I did also install the Minify Everything mod again. Otherwise, the chem fuel tank here, for example, would not be movable. This has been a pet peeve of mine for years now. If my colonists can carry a full-grown elephant, they should be able to reinstall a chem fuel tank. I promise we won't abuse the mod, I think I never really did. In any case, we now have access to nutrient paste, and with that to the nutrient paste dispenser, which could serve us well on our travels and actually was the last smaller project I wanted to finish. At this point though, I think we have no other choice but to go with the multi-analyzer. Both fabrication and the very useful shuttle are locked behind this, and both will be essential for prolonged exploration with the gravship. With a morning rain setting in, we then also need to haul our recently mined components into safety, and unfortunately the birth of 2 new pigs only enriches our food supply. They will not join us wherever we travel next. Inside of our gravship then, we start building a nutrient paste dispenser. I am very much planning on feeding our colonists with fine meals for the foreseeable future, but this provides us with a good alternative if we need to conserve resources or cooking is just not an option. In the evening then, we also bring in a psychoid harvest, another field of crops that will not be resown, while Saber, with the steel vein mined out, keeps making clothing. Once we lift off, I don't want anyone to wear tattered or poor quality apparel. She can also quickly smelt some weapons to gain us a bit of extra steel, and just like that, it's morning again and we're building a solar panel. Maybe we can extract a few units of gold with the deep drill before we leave, and we need solar panels anyway to power the gravship. The arrival of a bulk goods trade caravan then is perfect timing. Not only does this allow us to sell off all of our old clothing items for a nice profit, but, and I really hope you're not too mad at me for this, it also means that we can now sell off some animals. So we say goodbye to Crocodile, Caven, Curly, Tydrum, Coo, Lemon Sprinkles, Zugi and Ruka. I made sure to pick those animals that have been with us the longest. They will be missed, and I would like to once again express my thanks to those who named them, but unfortunately I think it's time that we downsize the flock. If we really want to catch a pair of every animal in the game, Noah's Ark style, then we simply cannot afford to let our numbers run this high. That's not to say that these animals haven't been an essential part of our resource production here in the Grasslands, but again, if we want to broaden our collection, we can't have 10 of each animal. Now, from our spare furs and leathers, we are going to make some armchairs here. Saber has already made decent clothing for everyone, and this ensures our colonists sit comfortably. Since we do unfortunately need a bit more steel and our underground scanner hasn't brought up anything useful, we are also sending Saber out on another mining trip at night, otherwise we might be sitting here for a while. We then also have a lone nightly visitor, but we wait until Reno wakes up on the next morning to trade with him, and we only purchase some medicine. That extra steel we mined is then used in the construction of a second solar panel. If we can still acknowledge that our gravship vaguely resembles a frog's or toad's head, then the two solar panels will eventually make for the eyes. I know it's not a perfect resemblance, but I really like the idea. The rest of the day remains uneventful. As you can see, we have Reno cooking all the way into the evening. I want him to make as many fine meals as possible before we lift off. Just as we learn that our sheep Laura has given birth, we are sadly also informed that several of our colonists have come down with the plague, so as our best doctor, Saber now rushes over to tend to them, and we are using proper industrial-grade medicine for this, just to make sure that the productivity hit on our last few days here is as low as possible. The following day also remains largely uneventful until we are visited by an exotic goods trader, the perfect opportunity to spend all that money we made with the first caravan earlier. Our mastodon tusks help us afford all their regular and advanced components, hopefully enough to breach the gap until we can make our own. In the evening then, Reno is making more meals. As you can see on the left side, we still have over 1000 units of vegetarian ingredients, so no matter where we travel, I don't think there will be a shortage of food in the first few days. We could use some meat though. However, just as I was planning to hunt those two buffaloes down here, we have a pack of man-hunting wargs appearing, and well, I suppose we are in luck. The trade caravan is still around to take them off our hands. One of their combatants did go down in the fight though and will now need treatment. Saber is quick on the scene though, and we won't need any medicine for this. It also looks like Lady Luck remains on our side for a little while longer. Our ground-penetrating scanner finds an underground steel deposit right inside of our base. Maybe a bit too late unfortunately, but at least we can now stop scanning, save some power and free up Nelgraph for other tasks. We also have a pretty close call with Saber here, as one of the wargs gets back up after being downed. Luckily though, the caravan guards shoot it down before it can harm us. Eventually then, the traders make their way off the map and we gain a nice faction relation bonus for healing one of them. And well, that is not the only thing we gain. It appears as if one of their caravan buffaloes went down in the fight, and as you can see, it has now left behind a whole bunch of valuable goods, including those mastodon tusks we traded away, but also 2 gene packs, a stone skin gland and a death rest capacity serum. So yeah, one hell of a lucky stretch here for us, and the events just keep coming. Only a few moments later a transport pod crashes. Inside, a 47-year-old nervous misandrist, very good at melee combat, but probably not a recruitment project we want to take on at this stage. Speaking of projects, while Saber rushes out to give medical attention to the refugee, we quickly shift our research attention to xenogenetics, as that unlocks the gene bank, and without it the 2 gene packs here will eventually deteriorate. The crashed space refugee meanwhile has been stabilized and is now being carried back to the base, and inside the gravship we are now installing a flat screen television, also a lucky bit of loot from the dead caravan buffalo. As the weather then shifts to a mysterious grey pall, a dark scholar approaches the colony. She is a tough psychopath with talents in combat, research and medical, and she also has access to the Dead Life Dust ability, allowing her to resurrect corpses as shamblers. As Brian approaches, she asks, or rather demands, to join us. However, we also learn that she harbors a secret. Nonetheless, we will accept her into our ranks. Her skill set is just too good to pass up, I think, and the Dead Life Dust ability might just help us out in a few moments. Not to mention that this gives me the perfect opportunity to use a name that I've had on my shortlist for a little while now. After the channel supporter of the same name, our 7th colonist of the series will now be named Dustwolf. And with her rather unique gift in mind, we are going to construct a little chamber here. It will get a cooler to keep everything inside nice and fresh, and then we'll make it our place to store every last corpse on the map. The idea behind this is simple. If we can raise all of these corpses as shamblers, then we might just have ourselves a small army to help beat back those pirates, so it is becoming more and more likely that we're going to accept that quest. The xenogenetics project is then also very quickly finished, and just like that, we can now construct a gene bank and continue with the multi-analyzer. Our rescued refugee then gives up and wanders away. Not exactly what I would call grateful, but she's healthy enough and should make it off the map. However, with our aid freshly refused, we are then called upon to help just a few seconds later. This time, a 4-year-old girl is begging to join us, and who would we be to refuse her, even if there is an unknown threat on her heels? However, we are going to wait until the very last moment to accept this quest, just in case that unknown threat is something we need to fly away from. In the meantime, Nailgraph and the recently recruited Dustwolf go muffalo hunting. Not for food though, but to add them to our Shambler recruitment pool. Just in that moment, our poor refugee also has a change of heart and decides to return to us. Well, I suppose we have a spare bed for her to recover. At this point though, it is high time that we accept the other quest here, and just a few moments later we are joined by a 4-year-old child. We are going to name her Cat after the Patreon supporter of the same name. Obviously her skills and traits are that of a 4-year-old, so nothing overly exciting. She is part of a supremacist radar ideology though, probably something we should change as soon as we can. At this point, let us also accept the Pirates of Fortune quest, and we are doing so to get yet another colonist into our ranks. That is, if we can fend off 11 pirates arriving in drop pods. They will take roughly 2 days to get here though, so we still have a bit of time that we can spend on trying to convert Dustwolf, whose ideology is not exactly what we're looking for either. We also construct a 3rd small thruster to maximize the range of our gravship, as well as a fueled smithy. I decided to save the components for an electric one, as we have plenty of wood lying around at the moment, and we are now going to use this smithy to have Saber make a plasteel spear. Just in that moment, we also learn what little Cat was running from. After comparing a pirate to a hedgehog, the pirates have now launched a climate adjuster. Honestly, I think that might be something we can live with, even if I believe that it is a temperature increase, and temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius are not exactly comfortable to be in. But I'll gladly take it over an enemy raid, and we even get a beautiful aurora to make up for it. On the next morning then, the grey pall has thankfully subsided. We are already preparing some traps outside of our base, and we are also expanding our small defensive corridor here a bit to fit one extra trap. As we then begin the final preparations on board of the gravship, Saber finishes the plasteel spear, and it is of good quality, so as our best melee fighter she can now equip it herself. The gravship meanwhile, as you can see, is getting pretty tightly packed. Next to the rather cozy sleeping quarters, every last bit of space on this ship will be utilized. In hindsight, we probably could have built it a bit bigger considering all the steel we have now coming in. But at this point, with pirates about to attack us, I do not dare make any large-scale changes. Before those pirates arrive, however, it is then another bulk goods trade caravan, and once again, I cannot believe the luck we're having in this episode. Once again, this is absolutely perfect timing, as the pirates are about to attack in just a few hours, and this caravan looks like it can more than hold its own. And so we get one last unexpected opportunity here to sell off everything we don't need. As you can see, that includes our entire corn harvest and also a death rest capacity serum, but in exchange we'll be able to acquire 33 regular and 2 advanced components, as well as a hood and a cowboy hat. and in the final stages of dismantling the base, the pirates then arrive. Now, I had expected this to be a scattered drop pod raid, but apparently it's a siege, and so we immediately take countermeasures. It's a good thing they have spawned so close to our base, even if Nelgraf's long-range shooting cannot prevent the construction of the first mortar here. At the very least, we are not dealing with incendiary rounds, and just a few seconds after the first shot is fired, we have the pirates' undivided attention. During the retreat, Dustwolf unfortunately suffers a small injury, but both her and Nelgraf safely make it behind our walls, and it also looks like we got the pirates to split up in the process, with some of them hopefully about to run into our traps, while the others now engage the caravan. At this point, Dustwolf is also about to enter our frozen corpse storage room, where she can now release her dead-life dust to resurrect a good dozen shamblers. Looking back at it, this probably was a waste of her ability. Just a few seconds later, the pirates have suffered enough casualties and decide to flee, and while we clean up the mess they have made, we now receive our quest reward. And so it is now time to welcome yet another colonist into our ranks, the third one in just a few minutes. We'll name her Kyla after channel supporter Kyla Blyton, combat-oriented with a love for plants, and unfortunately also believing in a cannibal ideology, but I'm sure we'll be able to fix that. Now, before the caravan leaves, let's quickly sell them a bit more stuff that we have just scavenged from the raid. Everything that we can use ourselves we'll store on board of the gravship. Now, the rest of our story here in the Grasslands is quickly told. We pack up the few devices that we want to take with us and deconstruct everything else to regain some materials. The raiders' siege equipment is of course also a welcome addition to our storage room. And, very timely, in the evening our space refugee decides to leave again after making a full recovery. We chop down the last few trees to make sure to take with us every last resource we can. A few hours later, the rescued refugee then finally makes it off the map and we receive a nice faction relation bonus. And with that, let us now accept the regional survey quest to find out in which direction we need to travel, before we then get everyone ready to launch the gravship. With River and Nelgraf at the helm, we will once again be leaving this map tile behind and won't be able to return. And after our chicken Soko finds a comfortable place on board of the solar panel here, we are ready for liftoff. Now, despite 3 thrusters and a full chem fuel tank, we can't actually travel all that far, so I think we'll have to settle for just shy of the halfway point here. We remain in the Grasslands, but this time we are going for a coastal tile that also features a large river, perhaps the perfect spot to test out the new fishing mechanic. And as the Heaser Mark II flies across the Grasslands towards its new landing spot, I think it's time to make the cut. We once again have some lovely fan art this week, and while you enjoy what's on screen right now, let me read you a poem that was once again sent in by Leon Bruckner, whose name may be familiar as he already wrote one at the beginning of the series. In time of need in space or down on road, to my own eyes he sure was a pleaser. This big and purple friend, the guardian toad, loved and missed my dearest one was Heaser. And in the toxic muck you kept me safe, then while it seemed we were to go insane, for all of us you were indeed so brave to give your life so nobly on that plane. And now I mourn my first found friend and weep, as now you rest in Som's grand stellar keep. And with those lovely words I'll leave you to it. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. Of course, if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.